The gleaming metal sphere of Station Orbital hung silently against the backdrop of stars, its blue-green surface reflecting the light of a distant sun. Inside the central command room, Admiral Ta sipped his morning tea, watching the endless swirl of data on the main display. "Admiral, we're picking up something unusual," said Officer Gill, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "Unknown signature at the edge of our sensor range." Admiral Tai set down his cup. "Classification." "That's just it, sir. It doesn't match anything in our database." The command center fell silent. In the 300 years since the Galactic Alliance formed, they had cataloged every ship design from all 12 member species. An unknown signature meant only one thing: first contact. "Alert the diplomatic corps," Admiral Ta said, straightening his uniform, "and put us at cautionary status." Lieutenant Kim, the youngest officer on the bridge, looked up from her station. "Sir, we're getting better readings now." "The vessel? It's massive." The main screen shifted to show a grainy image that grew clearer by the second. What they saw caused murmurs to spread across the command center. The unknown ship was indeed massive, at least 3 times larger than their largest cruiser. Its dark hull featured angular lines and protruding structures that could only be weapon systems. "Lieutenant Kim, take a scout vessel and establish a proper visual," ordered Admiral Ta. "Maintain safe distance. Do not approach within weapon range." Kim nodded and left quickly. Within minutes, her small scout ship detached from the station and accelerated toward the mysterious vessel. "Sending visual feed now." Kim's voice came through the speakers as her ship approached the unknown vessel. The image on the main screen sharpened. The massive ship's hull was dotted with what appeared to be weapon ports. Strange symbols marked its sides, possibly a language or designation system unlike any the Alliance had encountered. "Look at the size of those cannons," whispered Officer Gill. "That's not an exploration vessel or a trader. That's a warship." Admiral Ta frowned. In the Alliance, warships were small and few. Their member species had evolved beyond large-scale warfare centuries ago. This ship spoke of a culture where conflict remained significant. "Lieutenant, attempt communication on all standard frequencies," Tai ordered. "Yes, Admiral. Broadcasting greeting messages on all channels." Minutes passed. The tension in the command center grew. The unknown ship continued its approach, moving with purpose but not aggression. "Sir, we're receiving a response. They've accepted our communication protocol." The main screen flickered, and everyone in the command center held their breath. The image resolved to show a being they had never seen before. It appeared mostly hairless, with a flat face, small nose, and forward-facing eyes. Its skin was a light brown color, and it wore a dark uniform with unfamiliar insignia. "This is Captain Park of the Earth Battleship Thunderstrike," the being said in a deep, measured voice. The translation system worked flawlessly, converting the unknown language to standard Alliance speech. "We represent humanity and the United Earth Government. We come in peace, but we are prepared for otherwise." Admiral Ta stepped forward. "I am Admiral Ta of the Galactic Alliance. We welcome you to our space and wish to establish peaceful relations." Captain Park nodded. "We appreciate your welcome. We've been exploring this sector for some time, looking for intelligent life. It seems we found it." "Your vessel is impressive," Admiral Ta said carefully. "We've never seen its like." A small smile appeared on the human's face. "The Thunderstrike is our newest class of deep space exploration battleship. Where we come from, exploration and defense often go hand in hand." Admiral Ta exchanged glances with his officers. The concept of combining exploration with military might was foreign to them. "We would like to invite you to dock with our station, Captain Park. Perhaps we could meet in person and learn more about each other." The human seemed to consider this for a moment. "We accept your invitation, Admiral. I'll bring a small delegation aboard. Please understand if we seem cautious. This is our first contact with a non-human civilization." As the communication ended, the command center erupted in excited conversation. Lieutenant Kim's voice came through once more from her scout ship. "Admiral, you should see this vessel up close. It's incredible. The technology must be centuries beyond ours." Admiral Ta gazed at the image of the massive human battleship. "Let us hope they are as peaceful as they claim. Something tells me humans might change everything we thought we knew about the galaxy." Ambassador Lee stood at the front of the small delegation as they waited in the docking bay. His heart beat rapidly in his chest. None of the 12 species of the Galactic Alliance had ever encountered beings from outside their known space. Today would mark history. The airlock hissed open. Ambassador Lee straightened his ceremonial robes and tried to appear calm. Beside him, Engineer Jun fidgeted with his scanner, while Medical Officer Sue remained perfectly still, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of her nervousness. 2 figures stepped through the airlock. The aliens, humans, wore dark blue uniforms with silver trim. Ambassador Lee had seen Captain Park's face on the view screen, but nothing prepared him for seeing humans in person. They were tall, taller than any Alliance species except perhaps the Trell. But unlike the willowy Trell, these humans possessed dense muscle mass. They moved with a fluid grace that reminded Lee of predator species. Their skin varied in color from light tan to deep brown, and their eyes, forward-facing like hunters, scanned the room with alert precision. "Ambassador Lee," Captain Park said, extending a hand. "Welcome aboard the Thunderstrike." Lee stared at the outstretched limb, unsure what to do. Captain Park smiled and demonstrated the motion. "It's called a handshake, a greeting between our people." Cautiously, Lee extended his 3-fingered hand. The human's grip was firm but careful. Lee noticed how Captain Park had adjusted his strength, likely realizing Lee's species was physically weaker. "This is my first officer, Commander Yoon," Captain Park said, gesturing to the second human, a female with shorter hair and sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "Thank you for allowing us aboard your vessel," Lee said. "This is Medical Officer Sue and Engineer Jun." Captain Park nodded to each. "We've prepared a tour of our ship. We understand this is a significant moment for both our peoples." As they walked through the massive battleship, Lee couldn't hide his amazement. The corridors were wide and well lit, but reinforced with metal that Engineer Jun's scanner identified as alloys unknown to Alliance science. They passed rooms filled with humans training in physical combat, others working at advanced computer systems, and storage areas containing weapons Lee couldn't begin to understand. "Your ship seems very focused on military capability," Lee observed carefully. Captain Park nodded. "The Thunderstrike is a battleship, first and foremost, but it also serves as a long-range explorer. Earth learned early that the universe isn't always friendly." "Have you encountered other hostile species?" asked Medical Officer Sue. A shadow passed over Captain Park's face. "Yes, our first contact with non-human life was unfortunate. The Drav saw us as prey. We proved otherwise." The humans led them to a large meeting room with a viewport showing the stars. As they sat around the table, Engineer Jun's curiosity got the better of him. "Your species, you seem built for combat," he said. "Even your body structure suggests predatory evolution." Captain Park smiled. "You're observant. Yes, humans evolved as pursuit predators on what you might call a death world." "Death world?" Lee asked, the translator stumbling slightly over the term. "Earth has high gravity, extreme weather patterns, diverse predators, and terrain ranging from burning deserts to frozen wastelands," Commander Yoon explained. "Our bodies evolved to survive there." Medical Officer Sue's 4 eyes widened. Such conditions would kill most Alliance species within days. "We suspected as much," Captain Park said. "Your physical structures suggest evolution in much more stable environments." Engineer Jun had wandered toward a wall panel, his scanner whirring. "Your technology is remarkable. We've never seen energy systems configured this way." Engineer Jun, Perhaps you should. Lee began, but it was too late. Jun's scanner touched the panel. Instantly, red lights flashed throughout the room. A blaring alarm sounded. Before the Alliance delegation could react, 4 more humans burst through the door, weapons drawn. Captain Park and Commander Yoon had both pulled small devices from their uniforms and moved into defensive positions. The entire transformation took less than 3 seconds. "Security breach in diplomatic chamber," stated a calm voice from nowhere. Engineer Jun had fallen backwards, his scanner clattering to the floor. I didn't mean." Captain Park raised a hand, and the armed humans immediately lowered their weapons. "Stand down." False alarm. The red lights stopped flashing. The armed humans retreated, but Lee noticed they remained just outside the door. "I apologize for the misunderstanding," Captain Park said, returning the small weapon to a hidden pocket. "Our security systems are quite sensitive." Lee helped Jun to his feet, noticing how badly the engineer was trembling. All 3 Alliance members were shaken by the display. "Your response was immediate," Lee said, trying to keep his voice steady. Commander Yoon's expression remained serious. "When you faced extinction, Ambassador, you learned to react quickly or not at all." Lee looked at the humans with new understanding and a touch of fear. These weren't just advanced aliens. They were survivors, forged in conditions the Alliance species could barely imagine. "Perhaps," Lee said carefully, "we should continue our cultural exchange. I believe we have much to learn about each other." The diplomatic meeting room felt tense after the security incident. Ambassador Lee and his team sat stiffly in their chairs, casting nervous glances at the human officers. Captain Park noticed their discomfort and exchanged a meaningful look with Commander Yoon. "I sense our defensive capabilities have caused some concern," Captain Park said, breaking the uncomfortable silence. "Perhaps a demonstration would ease your concerns, something to help you understand the nature of our technology." Science Officer Jun, who had joined the delegation after their initial boarding, leaned forward with interest. "What kind of demonstration?" Captain Park smiled. "If you'll accompany me to the bridge, I believe we can show you something that might put things in perspective." The Alliance delegation followed the humans through the ship's corridors. Crew members nodded respectfully as they passed, but the aliens couldn't help noticing how each human moved with alert awareness of their surroundings. The Bridge of the Thunderstrike was a marvel of technology. Curved displays showed star charts, ship status, and various readings the aliens couldn't interpret. Officers worked at stations with quiet efficiency. A large viewing window at the front revealed the vastness of space, with station orbital visible in the distance. "Lieutenant Han," Captain Park called to a young officer. "What's the status of the asteroid field in Sector 7? The officer checked her displays. "Approximately 300 objects ranging from 1 to 50 meters in diameter, Captain. Navigation hazard level moderate." "Perfect," Captain Park said, turning to the aliens. "Ambassador Lee, your station has been monitoring this asteroid field, correct?" Lee nodded. "Yes, it drifted into this sector last month. We have warning beacons to keep ships away. The field is still 20,000 kilometers from here," Science Officer Jun added. "No immediate danger." Captain Park smiled. "Excellent. Then you won't mind if we clean it up a bit." He turned to his weapons officer. "Commander Du, prepare targeting systems. Low yield, precision shots only." Commander Du's fingers danced across his console. "Targeting systems online, Captain. Kinetic batteries 1 through 4 ready, awaiting your command." The aliens exchanged confused glances. Ambassador Lee stepped forward. "Captain Park, what exactly are you planning to do?" "We're going to remove that asteroid field," Captain Park said simply. "Watch the main viewer." The large screen of the front of the bridge changed to show the distant asteroid field, hundreds of rocks tumbling slowly through the blackness of space. "You intend to destroy all those asteroids?" Engineer Jun asked, disbelief evident in his voice. "That would take days, even with our best mining equipment." Commander Yoon smiled slightly. "Just watch." Captain Park nodded to Commander Du. Begin demonstration. Standard elimination pattern. Firing. Commander Du responded. The alien saw no visible beam or projectile from the ship, but on the screen one of the larger asteroids suddenly exploded into dust. Before they could react, another asteroid disintegrated, then another. The pattern continued with mechanical precision. One asteroid destroyed every 2 seconds. What you're seeing is our basic kinetic battery system, Commander Yoon explained as the aliens watched in stunned silence. Magnetically accelerated projectiles traveling at approximately 8% light speed. Science Officer Jun pulled out his scanner, his hands trembling slightly. The targeting precision is impossible. You're hitting objects 20,000 kilometers away with pinpoint accuracy. Switch to energy weapons. Captain Park ordered calmly. Show them the plasma lance. Commander Du adjusted his controls. Plasma lance charge. Target acquired. This time, the aliens did see something. A brilliant blue-white beam that flashed from somewhere on the Thunderstrike's hull. On the screen, a cluster of asteroids simply vanished, vaporized instantly. That's... Engineer Jun stammered. That's not possible. The energy requirements alone would exceed anything our technology could generate. Captain Park turned to the aliens. One final demonstration. Commander Du, prepare the gravity pulse. The weapons officer worked his console again. Gravity pulse ready, Captain. Target is the largest remaining asteroid cluster. Fire. There was no visible beam this time. Instead, the aliens watched as the largest remaining asteroids suddenly collapsed inward, as if crushed by an invisible hand. The rocks compressed smaller and smaller until they imploded into dust. Science Officer Jun's scanner dropped from his nerveless fingers. You manipulated gravitational fields. As a weapon. His voice was barely a whisper. According to our scientific understanding, such technology should be centuries beyond current possibilities. Captain Park picked up the fallen scanner and handed it back to Jun. My species has always had a talent for developing technology quickly when survival demands it. How did your kind develop so quickly? Jun asked, still staring at the screen where the asteroid field had been reduced to harmless debris in minutes. Captain Park's expression grew serious. Necessity. Earth's history is filled with conflict. Competition. When the Drav found us, they thought we would be easy prey. We weren't. We adapted. We survived. Ambassador Lee looked at the human captain with new understanding. Your species evolved for survival. All species evolve for survival, Ambassador, Commander Yoon said quietly. Humans just had to try a little harder. The bridge fell silent as the Alliance delegation contemplated the implications of what they had witnessed. These humans weren't just another spacefaring race. They were something entirely different, forged in conflict, tempered by struggle, and possessing technology that shouldn't exist. I believe, Ambassador Lee said carefully, that the Alliance Council will be very interested in establishing formal relations with Earth. The Alliance delegation and human officers shared a light meal in the Thunderstrike's conference room. Relations had warmed considerably after the weapons demonstration. Engineer Jun peppered Commander Du with questions about human energy systems, while Science Officer Jun engaged in deep conversation with Commander Yoon about gravitational physics. Ambassador Lee and Captain Park sat at the head of the table, discussing potential trade agreements between their peoples. Your medical technology could benefit many of our outer colonies, Lee said, and in return, we could share our atmospheric terraforming methods. Captain Park nodded. Terraforming would greatly accelerate our expansion efforts. We've colonized 12 systems so far, but the process is slow. Only 12. Lee seemed surprised. The Alliance spans over 40 systems. We're young as a spacefaring species, Captain Park admitted. We only developed faster than light travel 60 years ago. Lee nearly choked on his drink. 60 years. But your technology. Before Captain Park could respond, a soft tone sounded throughout the room. A voice spoke from hidden speakers. Captain Park to the bridge. Priority communication from Station Orbital. The captain stood immediately. Please excuse me, Ambassador. You're welcome to join me if you wish. Lee glanced at his team, who nodded eagerly. We would be honored. The group moved quickly to the bridge. As they entered, Lieutenant Han turned from her station. Captain, we're receiving an emergency transmission from Admiral Ta. He's requesting to speak with Ambassador Lee as well. Put him through, Captain Park ordered. Admiral Ta's face appeared on the main screen. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by tight-lipped concern. Ambassador Lee, Captain Park, he said with a quick nod. We have an emergency situation. Colony Station 6 has sent a distress signal. They're under attack. The atmosphere on the bridge shifted instantly. The human officers straightened, their relaxed postures disappearing. Attack? Ambassador Lee asked. By whom? The swarm, Admiral Ta said grimly. 3 carrier ships emerged from jump points near the colony. They've launched fighter craft and boarding pods. Captain Park turned to Lee. The swarm? I'm not familiar with this species. Lee's face had paled. They're a hostile race from the outer rim. Insectoid. Hive-minded. They've made incursions into Alliance space before, but never this deep. The colony has activated emergency shields, Admiral Ta continued, but they won't hold for long. Station 6 is primarily a research outpost with minimal defensive capabilities. Over 3,000 civilians are stationed there. What about Alliance military response? Captain Park asked. Admiral Ta's expression grew more troubled. Our defensive fleet is currently deployed in the Denary sector. Even at maximum speed, they are 3 days away from Colony 6. 3 days, Engineer Jun exclaimed. The colony won't last 3 hours against swarm carriers. Captain Park turned to Commander Yoon. What's our status? All systems optimal, Captain. Crew at 97% readiness. Captain Park studied the tactical display showing Colony 6 location. How long would it take the Thunderstrike to reach the colony at maximum speed? Lieutenant Han calculated quickly. 6 hours, 17 minutes, Captain. The bridge fell silent. The Alliance members looked at each other with grim expressions, while the human officers waited for their captain's decision. Captain Park turned back to Admiral Ta on the screen. Admiral, the Thunderstrike can reach Colony 6 in just over 6 hours. We stand ready to assist. Ambassador Lee stepped forward. Captain Park, I appreciate your offer, but this isn't your conflict. The swarm are extremely dangerous. They overwhelm through sheer numbers and have biological weapons that can eat through hull metal. All the more reason Colony 6 needs immediate help, Captain Park replied. One ship might make the difference between survival and annihilation. Admiral Ta studied the human captain thoughtfully. Captain Park, while I'm grateful for your offer, I must point out that this would be considered direct military intervention in Alliance affairs. Without formal treaties between our peoples, such action could have diplomatic complications. Captain Park smiled slightly. Then perhaps we should formalize something. A temporary emergency assistance agreement, at minimum. Ambassador Lee looked at Admiral Ta. I have authority to establish emergency protocols. I'll take responsibility for this decision. Admiral Ta nodded slowly. Very well. Captain Park, the Alliance formally requests the assistance of the Earth vessel Thunderstrike in the defense of Colony Station 6. Request accepted, Captain Park said immediately. He turned to his crew. Set course for Colony 6. Maximum speed. Sound battle stations. A new alarm sounded throughout the ship, different from the security alert the aliens had heard earlier. This tone was deeper, more urgent. Captain, Commander Yoon said, should our guests return to Station Orbital before we depart? Captain Park looked at Ambassador Lee. That's your choice, Ambassador. We can arrange quick transport back to your station, or you're welcome to remain aboard. Lee exchanged glances with his team. Science Officer Jun nodded firmly, while Engineer Jun looked nervous but determined. We will stay, Lee decided. If you're risking your ship to save our people, The least we can do is bear witness. Captain Park nodded. Commander Yoon, prepare guest quarters in the secure section. Lieutenant Han, plot the fastest course to Colony 6. The bridge erupted into activity as the human crew prepared for battle. The Alliance delegation watched in fascination as the massive battleship came alive around them. Jumping to FTL in 30 seconds, Lieutenant Han announced. Captain Park turned to Ambassador Lee. I suggest you prepare yourselves. You're about to see what the Thunderstrike was really built for. The Thunderstrike moved through space at speeds the Alliance had only theorized possible. Ambassador Lee stood on the observation deck, watching the stars blur outside the reinforced windows. The massive battleship hummed with energy around him. In the 5 hours since they had changed course toward Colony 6, the human vessel had transformed. Ambassador, would you like to observe our preparations? Commander Yoon asked, appearing beside him. Captain Park thought you might be interested in our pre-combat protocols. Lee nodded. Yes, very much so. My colleagues as well. Of course, they're already in the armory with Security Chief Han. They walked through corridors now filled with purposeful activity. Crew members moved with quick precision, their earlier relaxed demeanor replaced by focused intensity. Lee noticed that each human wore a sidearm now, something they hadn't carried during peaceful diplomatic meetings. The armory was a massive chamber that spanned 2 decks. Engineer Jun and Science Officer Jun stood to one side, watching wide-eyed as dozens of humans prepared for battle. Some worked on sleek black armor suits, while others checked weapons Lee couldn't begin to understand. Security Chief Han stood in the center of the room, surrounded by what Lee assumed were Marines. These humans were larger, more heavily muscled than the regular crew, with scarred hands and watchful eyes. The swarm use biological acid weapons and have chitinous armor approximately 3 centimeters thick, Han was saying, displaying images on a large screen. Aim for joint sections or sensory clusters. Standard ammunition is sufficient for worker drones, but warriors will require armor-piercing rounds. The Marines nodded, making adjustments to their weapons. No one spoke or asked questions. They simply absorbed the information and acted on it immediately. Remarkable, Science Officer Jun whispered as the Alliance delegation watched. Their coordination is almost like a hive mind itself, but each maintains individual function. In another section of the armory, Weapons Officer Sung calibrated what appeared to be personal shield generators. Her fingers moved in blur across the controls, adjusting each device in seconds before moving to the next. Efficiency through muscle memory, Engineer Jun noted. She's performed that exact sequence thousands of times. Ambassador Lee approached Lieutenant Choi, who was inspecting what appeared to be medical kits. Your people prepare for battle with incredible focus, he observed. Lieutenant Choi looked up. It's what we do, Ambassador. You fight as if you enjoy it, Lee said, watching the Marines check their weapons with practiced precision. Choi paused in her work. We don't enjoy it. We're just very good at it because we had to become so. She closed the medical kit with a snap. Humans learned long ago that when fight becomes necessary, half measures get people killed. Across the armory, a group of crew members activated powered armor suits. The exoskeletons whirred as they came online, enhancing the already impressive strength of the human Marines. Each suit can amplify strength by a factor of 10, Commander Yoon explained, noticing the aliens' interest. They also provide protection against vacuum, extreme temperatures, radiation, and most chemical or biological weapons. The cost to build such technology must be enormous, Engineer Jun said. It is, Commander Yoon acknowledged. But we found the cost of not having it is far higher. A chime sounded throughout the ship. Captain Park's voice came over the communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We will arrive at Colony 6 in 30 minutes. Pre-combat checks complete. All departments report readiness status. One by one, voices responded from throughout the ship. Engineering reports ready. All systems optimal. Medical bay prepared for casualties. Fighter squadron prepped for launch. Marine teams ready for boarding actions. Ambassador Lee turned to Commander Yoon. Your ship carries fighter craft as well. 6 tactical interceptors, Yoon replied. Small but effective against swarm fighters, based on your descriptions. What's the plan once we arrive? Science Officer Jun asked. The Thunderstrike will engage the swarm carriers directly, Commander Yoon explained. Our priority is drawing their attention away from the colony. Simultaneously, our Marines will deploy to the station to secure key systems and assist with evacuation if necessary. The ship's artificial gravity shifted slightly as the Thunderstrike adjusted course. Captain Park's voice came over the communication system again. Combat teams to ready positions. We've received updated intelligence from Colony 6. 4 swarm carriers now present, with approximately 60 fighter craft deployed. Colony shields at 30% and failing. The Marines moved with sudden urgency, forming into groups and moving toward the deployment bays. Weapons Officer Sung left her station, joining the bridge crew heading toward the command deck. Ambassador Lee, Captain Park continued, please join me on the bridge. We're about to exit FTL. As they made their way to the bridge, Lee caught sight of the Marine teams in full battle gear. Their faces showed no fear, no excitement, only calm readiness. These humans had turned warfare into a science, combat into an art form. They've evolved in ways we never had to, Lee said quietly to his colleagues. Their entire biology, their psychology, their technology, all of it shaped by conflict. Do you think they can defeat 4 swarm carriers? Engineer Jun asked nervously. Science Officer Jun watched as a squad of Marines jogged past, weapons locked and ready. I think, he said slowly, that the swarm is about to face something they've never encountered before. The deck trembled beneath their feet as the Thunderstrike prepared to drop out of FTL speed. The time for preparation was over. The Thunderstrike erupted into normal space with a flash of energy that momentarily distorted the stars around it. On the bridge, Ambassador Lee and his team gripped the safety rails as the massive battleship stabilized. Tactical assessment, Captain Park ordered calmly. Lieutenant Han's fingers flew across her console. 3 swarm carrier vessels surrounding Colony 6. Station shields at 17% and failing. Multiple breaches detected in the outer ring. Life support systems damaged but functional. The main view screen showed the grim scene. Colony 6, a beautiful ring-shaped station with branching habitation pods, was surrounded by 3 enormous insect-like ships. Smaller craft swarmed around the colony like angry insects, firing continuously at its weakening shields. The 4th carrier, Commander Yoon asked. Not present, Lieutenant Han replied. Possibly a false reading in the distress call. Captain Park took only seconds to assess the situation. Target main carrier vessels. Weapons free. All batteries, simultaneous fire. Captain, Commander Du confirmed from the weapons station. Firing solutions locked. All weapons ready. Ambassador Lee exchanged nervous glances with his colleagues. They had seen the Thunderstrike's weapons during the demonstration, but that had been against lifeless asteroids. This would be different. Fire, Captain Park ordered, his voice eerily calm. The deck trembled beneath their feet. On the view screen, lances of energy erupted from multiple points on the Thunderstrike's hull. Kinetic projectiles, invisible to the naked eye, but devastating in impact, streaked toward the nearest swarm carrier. The effect was immediate and shocking. The swarm vessel's outer armor crumpled under the assault. Secondary explosions rippled across its surface as the human weapons found vital systems. First carrier critically damaged. Lieutenant Han reported. Swarm vessels are responding. Fighter craft changing course to intercept us. Launch interceptors, Captain Park ordered. Draw their fire away from the colony. 6 smaller craft shot from the Thunderstrike's launch bays, their engines flaring bright against the darkness of space. Incoming transmission from Colony 6, Communications Officer Min announced. On screen, Captain Park ordered. A harried-looking Alliance officer appeared, smoke visible behind him. Thunderstrike. This is Colony 6 Command. We have multiple hull breaches. Swarm boarding parties have penetrated to residential sections. We cannot hold them back. Understood, Colony 6. Captain Park responded. Marine teams deploying now. Hold your position. The view screen split to show the remaining swarm carriers turning toward the Thunderstrike, abandoning their attack on the station to face this new threat. They recognize us as the greater danger, Commander Yoon observed. Good, Captain Park said. Bring us closer to the damaged carrier. Prepare the gravity pulse. The Thunderstrike surged forward, its advanced engines propelling the massive ship with surprising agility. Swarm fighters swarmed around them, their weapons fire splashing harmlessly against the battleship's shields. Human interceptors engaging swarm fighters, Lieutenant Han reported. 37 enemy craft destroyed. On the secondary screens, Ambassador Lee watched in amazement as the 6 human fighters executed maneuvers that should have been impossible, cutting through the swarm formations with surgical precision. Gravity pulse ready, Commander Du announced. Target the damaged carrier's central section, Captain Park ordered. Fire. There was no visible beam, but the effects were unmistakable. The already damaged swarm carrier seemed to collapse inward, its structure compressing as if caught in an invisible fist. Metal shrieked and tore as the massive ship imploded, breaking apart in a spectacular flash of light. Enemy carrier destroyed. Lieutenant Han confirmed. The other 2 are launching boarding pods. Multiple targets incoming. Captain Park nodded. As expected. Defensive grid to maximum. Marines to breach points. The ship shuddered as several swarm boarding pods slammed into the Thunderstrike's hull, their acid-tipped drills beginning to eat through the metal. Hull breaches detected on decks 7, 12, and 15. Lieutenant Han reported. Marine teams responding. Captain Park turned to Commander Yoon. Take the bridge. Continue the attack on the carriers. He looked at Ambassador Lee. Would you like to see how humans defend their ships? Lee hesitated only briefly before nodding. His scientific curiosity outweighed his fear. Captain Park led the Alliance delegation to a nearby security station. The screen showed multiple corridors where swarm soldiers had broken through the hull. The insectoid creatures moved with terrifying speed, their chitinous bodies gleaming under the emergency lights. Then the human Marines arrived. Lee had thought he understood human combat capabilities after watching their preparations. He had been wrong. The Marines moved with coordinated precision that seemed impossible for biological beings. Their powered armor made them nearly as large as the swarm warriors, but far faster. The lead Marine fired a weapon that sent pulses of energy through the nearest swarm soldier, dropping it instantly. 2 more Marines flanked the group, their weapons cutting down the invaders before they could respond. When a larger swarm warrior charged, secreting acid from its mandibles, a Marine simply stepped forward and engaged it hand-to-hand. The powered armor whirred as the human delivered a punch that shattered the creature's exoskeleton. They're containing the breach, Captain Park said, watching the screens calmly. Standard protocol. Science Officer June stared in shock. Your Marines are fighting them directly, without heavy weapons. Heavy weapons risk hull integrity, Captain Park explained. In close quarters, precision is key. On another screen, a Marine team had sealed a different breach point, methodically eliminating every swarm intruder. Not a single human had fallen. Captain to bridge, Commander Yoon's voice came over the comm system. Second carrier crippled. Third attempting to retreat. No survivors, Captain Park responded, his voice level but firm. Complete the mission. The entire engagement had lasted less than 15 minutes. The swarm boarding parties were eliminated. 2 carriers destroyed. The third soon followed. Ambassador Lee watched Captain Park, seeing him in a new light. This was not simply a diplomatic officer or ship commander. This was a warrior from a species that had mastered the art of warfare on a level the Alliance had never imagined possible. The colony is secure, Captain Park said, checking the final reports. Swarm presence eliminated. He turned to the stunned Alliance delegation. Now shall we assist with repairs? The great hall of the Galactic Council gleamed under soft blue lights. 12 massive chairs, one for each member species, formed a circle around the central speaking platform. Today, all seats were filled. For the first time in 20 years, every council member had arrived in person rather than sending representatives. The topic was too important for intermediaries. "Let us bring this session to order," announced High Counselor Munn, his translucent skin shimmering as he raised his ceremonial staff. "We gather to discuss the human question." Ambassador Lee stood on the speaking platform, still wearing the formal robes he'd donned 3 days earlier when this emergency session began. Behind him, Admiral Ta waited silently, his military uniform crisp despite the long hours of debate. "Honored counselors," Lee began, "I have shared my first-hand account of the human vessel Thunderstrike and its capabilities. I have shown the recordings of their defense of Colony 6. All evidence has been presented. And terrifying evidence it is," said Counselor Song, the eldest member of the council. The aged Vel's feathered crest flattened against his skull, a sign of deep distress. "These humans are dangerous. Their technology, their biology, their psychology, all are shaped by conflict. Their entire history is written in warfare." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The evidence was undeniable. Human history, shared openly by Captain Park after the battle, revealed a species that had fought countless wars among themselves before reaching the stars. "We cannot ignore their martial nature," agreed Counselor Dal of the Nerith. "The ease with which they destroyed 3 swarm carriers, ships that have decimated our own fleets in the past, should give us pause." Ambassador Lee waited for the murmurs to subside. "Counselors, I do not dispute the humans are formidable. But I witnessed not only their capacity for violence, but also their restraint. They risked their ship and crew to save our colony. They deployed medical teams to treat injured Alliance citizens. They helped rebuild damaged systems before departing." Admiral Ta stepped forward. "If I may, counselors." His voice, rarely heard in the council chamber, commanded immediate attention. "As military commander of Alliance forces, I must speak plainly. The humans represent the most significant military force we have encountered in 3 centuries. Their single battleship contains technology that matches or exceeds our entire fleet." The council chamber fell silent. For the head of Alliance military to admit such a thing was unprecedented. However, Admiral Ta continued, "I must also note that they have shown no aggression toward us. They have responded to diplomatic overtures with openness. They have shared technology freely, specifically medical and defensive systems that could benefit all our peoples." Counselor Song's feathers ruffled. "Admiral, you surprise me. I expected you of all people to advocate caution." Admiral Tay's expression remained calm. "I do advocate caution, Counselor, but I also recognize reality. Yes, these humans are dangerous. Yes, their entire history is written in conflict." He paused, looking each council member in the eye. "But wouldn't you rather have them as allies than enemies?" The chamber erupted in voices, some agreeing, others protesting. High Counselor Munn raised his staff, restoring order. "We must vote on whether to pursue formal alliance with Earth," Munn declared. "But before we do, has the Intelligence Division any final information to present?" A slender figure stepped from the shadows behind the council seats. Intelligence Director Jin moved silently to the platform, carrying a data crystal that glowed faintly red, the color used for highest priority intelligence. "Counselors," Director Jin said, her voice soft but carrying to every corner of the chamber, "our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual activity in the outer rim. The swarm is gathering a fleet unlike anything we have observed before. Current estimates suggest over 30 carrier vessels, with support craft numbering in the thousands." Shocked silence fell over the chamber. Even during the worst swarm incursions, they had never deployed more than 5 carriers at once. "Their course and speed suggest they will reach Alliance space within 2 months," Director Jin continued. "Based on their trajectory, We believe their target is the homeworld's cluster itself. The implications were clear to everyone. The homeworld's cluster contained the original planets of all 12 Alliance species, billions of lives, the cultural and political heart of their civilization. Our entire fleet could not stand against such a force, Admiral Ta said quietly. Not even if we recalled every ship from every sector. High Counselor Mun looked around the chamber. I believe this information changes our discussion considerably. The vote before us is no longer merely about diplomatic relations. It is about survival. One by one, the council members voted. When the final count was displayed, the result was unanimous. The first unanimous vote in over 50 years. 3 days later, on the observation deck of Station Orbital, Captain Park and Ambassador Lee stood side by side, watching as ships from both civilizations gathered for the signing ceremony. The Human Galactic Defense Treaty, Lee said, holding the crystal tablet containing the agreement. A new chapter in our shared history. Captain Park nodded. My government was pleased by the Council's decision. Earth has been alone among the stars for too long. Lee hesitated, then asked the question that had bothered him since their first meeting. Did you know about the swarm gathering their forces? Captain Park's expression revealed nothing. Intelligence is always incomplete, Ambassador. But we suspected something was coming. The swarm's attack pattern at Colony 6 was unusual, testing defenses rather than committing fully. You used the situation to demonstrate your capabilities to us, Lee realized, to ensure we would see the value of an alliance. Perhaps, Captain Park admitted, or perhaps we simply helped when help was needed. Does the motivation matter if the outcome benefits both our peoples? Before Lee could answer, Admiral Ta approached, accompanied by Earth's newly arrived diplomatic delegation. It's time, Admiral Ta said. The ceremony is ready to begin. As they walked toward the grand chamber where history would be made, Lee thought about how quickly the galaxy had changed. 1 month ago, the Alliance had never heard of humans. Now they were binding their futures together. This treaty is just the beginning, Captain Park said quietly. Together, we'll face whatever comes next. Lee nodded, looking at the stars visible through the station's viewports. For the first time in many years, the sight filled him with hope rather than worry. The swarm was coming. But this time, the Alliance wouldn't face them alone.